Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, today we are talking about stretching and why often it can fail us and what we can do to fix chronic aches and pains. Well, if you're tired of quick fixes and they're stretching over and over those tight muscles and never getting any relief, or reaching for the medicine cabinet every time, or worst case scenario, thinking of injections and surgery even, well, I want to stop you right there, because today we are going to help you get out of pain and solve your own issues using smarter techniques. And my guest today has decades of studying movement, flexibility, and why these common stretching techniques often can fail us. Now, he is a functional massage therapist. He's the host of the Muscle Repair Shop YouTube channel and the creator of Stretch and Release. And he is going to share his techniques with us today and hopefully help us get out of pain and live our lives with confidence without having to go down the old surgery route. So welcome to the show, Butch Phelps.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this because, as we know, I've had a lot of conversations about movement and all this kind of thing, but I'm really interested in your perspective because, as we say, you've done a lot of research into this,
right,
and finding out what it is about common techniques and why very often, we try all these things and they're not working, and what kind of makes what you're doing very different. But before we get into all of that, because we've got a lot to talk about, what actually got you excited about sort of flexibility and movement and stretching in particular?
That's a great question because I didn't get into this till I was like 40 years old, and I never really even actually thought about it until I was about 40. What happened was at 37, 38, I weighed about 315 pounds.
Right.
And I met a physician who changed the way I ate. She taught me how to change the way I eat mentally as well as physically. And I lost 105 pounds. So I'd been a trainer way back in my past. I'd been an athlete, so I knew how to get myself back in shape. So like most people, I go back to the gym. I'm really working hard to get in shape. And by 39, I was developing severe low back pain to the point that I would crawl out of my car onto my hands and pull myself up by the door handles. And I'm thinking, I'm almost 40 years old. This is insane. And I would go to typical doctors and physiotherapists and so forth, and they would teach me this basic stuff, but it never really got to the root of the problem. I thought I was doomed to be stuck with this for life. And I said to my wife, I think I'm going to go to massage school. It seems to be the easiest thing for my back. I don't have to lift things and so forth. And when I got there, it was, for lack of a better term, it was like a divine intervention. I got there and I started to look at the muscles of the human body, look at the body itself. And I quickly realized I knew things about the body that I didn't have any reason in my background to say I should know this stuff. And it was there. The right people came into my life. I had 5 mentors. 2 were actually neurosurgeons, a kinesiologist, chiropractor, and a PT. And they started bringing me bits and pieces about how the body works, specifically the muscle system with the bone and nervous system. And as I started putting those pieces together, I started developing the stretch and release technique for myself more than anybody. At that point, I was just trying to solve it for me, and it worked. And I'm like, holy cow, if it works for me, this is a whole different mindset from what I was taught and what other people were taught. And so then I began starting to teach it to people on my own. In fact, when I really first started out, most people here in the States really didn't like to hire male massage therapists. They were more looking for female massage therapists. So I met with a chiropractor who I knew had been working with me some, and he said to me, I'm not gonna pay you as an employee, but I'll rent you a room. So I rented a room, no clients, no marketing, no anything. And that's how it started. And 90% of my business today is from word of mouth. And it just keeps rolling because I'm teaching people how to take control of their own pain. And like I did with my own. So that's how I got started with that.
Well, that's it. And I think that's the key. We always feel we need to go. We're so pre-programmed to go to the physio and the doctor whenever we start to have pain. Or some people, you leave it a very long time, maybe even years before you decide to go down that route. And then it becomes a real chronic problem and is a much longer problem to resolve. But obviously now you're fitting well.
Yes.
You're doing well.
Yes. I always laugh because I say to people, I'm just turned 66 years old Monday. And I said to people, I feel more flexible now and less pain now than I did when I was 35 and 40 years old. But it's understanding how our body works, how our brain works with our muscles. And then we'll dive into that even more.
Absolutely. Because obviously, as we know, it's great. And you're a great example of showing what you can actually achieve and how important mobility is, particularly as we're getting older. The research is showing, in the next 2 or 3 decades, sort of tension, mobility is going to be a real issue for many people if they don't start doing something now. And you kind of need to start from a much younger age, because everything drops off from about the age of 35 if you don't stay fit, strong and mobile. You're going to have a much harder time later in life. So it's really, I would advise anyone who's younger listening is to really start now. But for us who are 40 plus, you really need to start addressing mobility, strength, mobility and recovery are the 3 main things, I think. But I think mobility is something people forget about. And it doesn't have to be, a gym-based intensive stretching thing, which is what we're going to get into in a bit. But what is it? What are the kind of the myths that you found around stretching and flexibility? Are there any myths that you can debunk for people?
Yeah, there's a few of them. I mean, one, you hear people talk about we're lengthening the muscles when you actually go to a stretching class. And I think for a lot of therapists, and I was one of them too when I first started, was that I thought I was actually lengthening my muscles. And the way to think about the muscles is that the tightness of the muscles comes from tension, but that tension comes from everything you think, feel, and do. So whatever state of mind you're in, whatever you're thinking, are you on a project, are you frustrated, are you angry about something? And as you start to have those thoughts in your head, your body will tighten up. I mean, think about the last time you were upset about something, how your body felt tight, versus when you're having a coffee or tea with a friend and just laughing and having a good time, you see. So that's one of the things that when we look at stretching, we're looking at releasing the tension in the muscle. And that requires a combination of what you do physically with the positioning of the muscles, but what you do emotionally with the positioning of the mind. The other thing is that people will say to me, well, I'm just not a flexible person. And I will always laugh and I go, why do you say that? Well, I can't do a split or a spread. Well, that's an extreme thing. And it's like, the question is how often do you need to do that in your life? What you need to be able to do is you need to be able to get up and down out of the chair, off the floor. You need to be able to walk up steps if necessary, carry things like your groceries from the store to your car. So just to be able to do daily things, because you need to be able to lubricate the joints in your body, the spine in your body, so that everything works right. And so one of the things I always say to people, they get the strength training, because I get this question, which is more important, strength training or stretching? Think of strength training as like for power, you're putting fuel in your car for the power, okay? Think of stretching as putting oil in the engine for lubrication. They're 2 different things, but if you leave one out, the car is going to stop.
Sure.
And so will you. And so that's the thing that when I listen to people talk about stretching, those are some of the common things. Now, the final one, which is I always share with people, shouldn't I hold it longer? Am I like fighting with my muscle here? Should I be pulling harder? So you see people, they're trying to almost like they're trying to pull their leg off or pull their arm off because they're trying to force the leg to do something or force the arm to do something. They think they're fighting with their muscle, but they're actually fighting with their brain, because as the brain feels the increased pain, what happens there is that it starts to contract the muscle to stop you from hurting yourself. Those are the major ones I see.
Yeah. And also it's just going back to the strength and the flexibility and mobility, which is included in that. And there is a difference between flexibility and mobility, because mobility is what you need around your joints. So if you want to get stronger, you kind of the muscles need to be flexible enough to allow the joints to be mobile. So you can then get into the position to strengthen the muscle. It's no good trying to strengthen anything if you're low on mobility.
That's exactly right. Part of my background in education is aging sciences and studying how we age mentally and physically. So the 2 go hand in hand, because you can be as flexible as you want, but if you don't have the strength to pick yourself up, to have the stability around the joints, your spine, you're going to have problems. You can be strong enough, you can lift the back end of a car, but if you're not so flexible that you can stand up straight, you're going to have problems. So those 2 go hand in hand. And what they found in studies is that as we age, as the mobility of our bodies decrease because of lack of either effort or lack of knowledge or whatever the case may be, as that decreases, the frailty of old age becomes more and more apparent and happens sooner.
Do you find a sort of common mistakes that people make when it comes to starting on this thing? Okay, I'm going to do some flexibility. But what do you find are the common things people get wrong that are quite easy to change?
The number one thing is they think that stretching is only when I feel pain or I feel stiff. That's a massive mistake, because Think of a dog or a cat. They stretch every day, several times a day. Because our muscles get tight from everything we think, feel, and do, our brains are working 24 hours a day. So you can be laying in bed, have a dream or a nightmare, and wake up and your body will be stiff because even though it was a perceived reality, the brain perceived it as actually happening to you. So your muscles will react to that. So you wake up stiff from a dream. Go through your life during the day. Every thought you have, every state of mind you go into, everything you're doing will cause you to become stiff. So it becomes a daily thing. So for me, I stretch every morning for about 15, 20 minutes when I first wake up. And I stretch every evening before I go to bed. Two things happen there. Number one, and what I found was that I slept better because my body was freer when I went to bed. And when I started my day off better, I didn't have that slow getting into my day. I could just get up and go and run. That's probably the number one thing I see with people when it comes to stretching and what they make it
Yeah.
wrong.
And I mean, there are many causes for being stiff,
Yeah.
but it's not just because you've exercised a lot or you've
Right.
been walking a lot or lifting stuff, like you say. It could be dysfunction in and
Yep.
around the joints and the muscle. But as you say, it can also be the level of stress and what types of stress you're going. And I completely understand, if you're going to go to bed in a stressed out state, that's going to be playing into your body while you're sleeping. Just because you're asleep doesn't mean your body is fully relaxed. How many times have we woken up out of our sleep feeling immediately stressed? Sometimes you don't
Right.
even know
Yeah.
your brain's
Yeah.
going and you can't rest and you're restless. And like you say, you get up and everything still aches, the shoulders,
Yes.
the neck, the lower back,
Yeah.
all these things. I've been
And,
there.
right, exactly. And don't forget about nutrition as well. I mean, if you're eating a high inflammatory diet, that's going to set up stiffness in your body as well.
Yeah. And if you're
Yeah.
dehydrated as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's really important to look at these things, not just from, I need to stretch, but you've got to look at everything in your environment that's going
Yeah.
on that can be affecting that.
And see, part of it, it's like I remember when I was going through school in each of my degrees that I was working on, we tend to look at the body as a mechanical thing
Yeah.
and not realizing it's an emotional thing as well. And in fact, when you look at the emotion versus the physical side of the human body, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I always tease my clients, they're like, so this whole brain connected to my muscle thing, I thought that I had like muscle memory. And I said to I had a conversation in a meeting with a room full of doctors, and there was a cardiologist there. And he was asking me about muscle memory. And I said, you're thinking that the muscle itself has a memory, which would require it to have a brain. But I said, let's put that aside. If the muscles have a memory and they can remember what to do, then why is it when someone has a stroke, whether it's hemorrhagic or ischemic, and the damage is to the brain, that the arm stops working? If the muscles in the arm have memory, why wouldn't it just keep on knowing what it's doing? And he kind of looked at me really funny and smiled, and he goes, touche. And he said, I had to think about that. And I said, exactly. So the brain is in control of your muscles 100% of the time because the brain jobs keep you safe. So if I'm in a building and it catches on fire and my brain says, oh my God, the building's on fire, we got to get out of here. I don't want my legs having the ability to say, I don't feel like doing it today. You would be in a pickle.
Well, actually, and this actually blends really into the next thing we're going to be talking about, because your thoughts on sort of the brain and the spine and the muscles. So obviously we know that nothing works without the central nervous system, first of all.
Right.
So that feeds information through the spine and the peripheral nervous system to make the body do whatever it needs to do, whether it's your muscles, your hormones, whatever it is, based on internal, external environment and what information is being fed to it. So I'm really interested, because this always fascinates me, even though I obviously have some idea of it, is your theories when it comes to flexibility and pain, chronic pain relief, and getting into that little bit of anatomy and physiology. I think would be really interesting to help people understand what's going on.
Chronic pain is an interesting thing. Most people describe chronic pain as anything that lasts more than 3 months. I tend to think it almost goes down to almost 2 months. What happens is that as you've been developing and working with chronic pain for a while, what goes through the mind is that every time you start to move, let's say you have chronic low back pain, every time you have to get up out of a chair, your brain's first thought is, this is going to hurt. And if you watch that person get up out of the chair, they'll grab the armrest and they'll come up really slow, like their body's just looking for that pain to happen. There it is. Okay. And so as you develop that pattern, now what happens is that when you you can't just get up because the brain is in that pattern of this is going to hurt, or for my foot or my knee, whatever the case may be. Over time, as you do that, the brain stays on high alert because let's say if it's a knee, my knee always hurts when I have to walk a certain distance. And you'll notice over time that that distance gets less and less and less because the brain is contracting the muscles around that joint to stabilize it, to try to prevent that pain. Over time, because the muscles are crossing over the joint, in other words, the muscles on the upper leg are crossing over the knee and attaching into the lower leg, and what's in the lower leg's crossing over the knee and attaching to the upper leg. As those muscles tighten, you lose spacing in that joint. And as you do that, you start to squeeze out the synovial fluid, which is like a it's a
Yeah.
lubricant, it's a cushioning agent kind of thing. Well, so we have cartilage on the end of the bones, and we always hear people say, well, I had to have my knee replaced, this bone on bone. What happened there was that as the muscle started pulling those bones closer together, because you can't extend your legs as far as you once did, you can't really move them the way you're supposed to, the weight then of your body starts to bang those bones together, breaking off that cartilage, okay? You mentioned earlier about talking to people when they're older. If you can get into that habit of learning how to stretch those muscles correctly and be on top of it consistently, then over time, I believe we could probably reduce the amount of knee replacements and hip replacements by 50%.
That's considerable.
That's considerable. And it's like, I watch people, even when they have their, like a knee replacement, like a lot of people with knee replacements, hip replacements, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I watch people, even when they had a knee replaced, and they got brand new bone, so to speak, okay, in the knee where they replaced that joint. But when they come out, they walk the same way as they did when they went in. And they wind up continuing to have the knee pain, not as severe, but still have the knee pain and the limitations that they had prior to the surgery.
Yeah.
And so one of the orthopedic surgeons here in town, he's retired now, but he was pretty well known. And we were having lunch one day, we were talking about it, and he said, keep in mind, I'm replacing the bones. If they come in with stiff muscles, they're going out with stiff muscles. I didn't replace the muscles. I just replaced the bones, you see. And the same is true in the spine. So we're all being sort of trained to look at the body from a mechanical standpoint, okay? We go in, we see a scan, we see something that we're trained to fix, we fix that. But there's little regard for what actually caused that to happen. You think about when we were younger, we didn't see people dragging themselves on the ground because their knees went out and nobody knew how to fix them. Their hips went out, nobody knew how to fix them. And people did have some knee pain, but it wasn't to the level that we see today. And I think that what happens today, we're not doing the manual labor, number one, that we once did. We're sitting a lot more than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And we've gained a lot more weight than we've ever had as people. And I think that those are major contributing factors. And so when you can improve your flexibility, improve your muscle strength, and I like to put those two things together because they're so intertwined. The muscles are being fueled by the glucose from the foods and stuff that you eat, which that can help you in reducing fat. There's been some recent studies that have come out and shown that's actually better than cardio. But when you have the strength to pick your body up and you have the flexibility to maintain it control, now the body can thrive. But I think when we come to chronic pain, I think that we are too reliant on, let's just go for a pain pill, which is fine. If the pain is bad, there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that understand you got more to do. Because the pain stopped didn't mean you healed yourself. You still have more to do. And I think that's where people get in trouble with that.
Well, I think that is the thing. And that's the trouble with over-medicating, isn't it, the thing?
Yeah.
Just covering up the symptoms, which is great because it immediately makes you relax and you feel a bit calmer.
Yeah.
The thing hasn't gone away. It's just been masked. So you can't go on being on pain relief indefinitely.
Right.
You have to get to the cause of it. And I think people think there is no other solution outside of the doctor and medication or surgery. And that isn't always, if we catch things before it gets that bad, better. But if you are in that situation, there are things you can do. But I do wonder as well, obviously thinking of how your mental state, your mindset, whether relation to, say, if you've had an injury or you've gone through an operation, in theory, you should be healed. You've been told by your specialist you'll be fine, go about your day normally.
Right.
But yet there's that, like you say, it's that fear of, am I going to hurt myself again?
Exactly.
Am I going to make it worse? So they're so super cautious because of going through all this again. They're actually just exacerbating a problem that shouldn't be there, but they're continuing it.
Well, that's exactly right. It's like, when you have a knee replaced or a hip replaced, you don't go to the doctor Friday morning and say, Doc, my hip started hurting this morning. He goes, you know what? Why don't you come back at 1? We'll replace it at 1 o'clock. Typically, it's months or sometimes years down the road. and you develop these mental and emotional patterns of how to walk with the least amount of pain. And the sad part is that when you're going through rehab with the physiotherapist, they're dictated to just getting you through your activities of daily living, going to the bathroom, getting
Mm.
dressed, getting up out of a chair. That's not the whole story. And it's
Yeah.
like, you have to go back. And what I do with my clients is once they're done with their rehab, I bring them back in here and we start talking about how to walk different. I start teaching them how to walk different, how to walk better. Our shoes play a massive role with that.
Oh,
Most people, in fact, I was one of them for years. I thought humans walked heel to toe. And as I started studying from guys like Dr. Dan Lieberman at Harvard University about walking and so forth, we're actually supposed to walk on the whole foot. And what they found was that the heel to toe came from wearing shoes with heels on it or a built up heel like in a sneaker. And it forces people to walk heel to toe. But when they do that, those shoes don't bend enough that the ankle can bend. And now all of a sudden, when they walk, if you watch most people, they lead with their nose and not their belly button. What does that show? What that shows up is that because the ankles are not bending, you're walking literally with the front of your thighs, which can lead to low back stiffness. And because the nose, you're leading with your nose, that can even affect your neck and shoulders just from the way you walk. And it's like, so we have to look at the person as a whole person. And I think that where we're making a mistake right now in medicine is that we've got so many specialized people. You got the hip guy, the knee guy, the ankle guy, the foot guy. We need all four of those guys in the room at the same time that can say, wait a minute, if we put this on the foot, you're going to screw up my hip or you're going to screw up my knee. And
yeah.
instead, we go to 4 different doctors on 4 different days who have no idea what the other 3 guys had to say. And we get this in pieces and patterns of things that we need to be able to put them together. And we're not doing that. And I think that leads to a lot of problems for people.
And do you think it's changing though? Do you think sort of treatments, therapies and stuff are changing? They're becoming a little more holistic. They're looking at the body more globally rather than now. Or is it still a bit stuck in this taking each part and looking at it mechanically?
Yeah.
Or is it? I hope it's changing. I feel it is.
I think there's certain pieces of it that are small pieces. And you hear people talk about functional medicine, functional massage therapy. People like that are looking at the body as a whole. I think they're becoming more and more people like that, but it's really a small amount of people. The money, and it's a terrible thing to say, the money's in the sickness, not the wellness. And that's too bad. Okay. But it's like, one of the neurosurgeons who was my mentor, she said to me years ago, she said, we take a scan of somebody's spine. We look at that scan. We see something there that I've been trained to fix. I know what to do with that. But she said, what I'll never ask and what most of my colleagues will never ask is what caused that to happen.
Yeah. And that's the problem.
Right. Because she said, in our minds, we're spine people. That's the hip having a problem, or that's the knee having a problem. I don't know about the hip and knee. I'm a spine person. So while the specialties are awesome, if you've got a serious issue with a knee, a hip, or a spine, that specialty can go deep into how to solve that particular spot. But when you broaden it out, what happens is that the surgery didn't fail, but the treatment for the person as a whole failed. So I've had a guy one time came in and he had his hip replaced and he was getting sick. He was having all these issues. They were putting PICC lines in him. He was in the hospital, I don't know, every other week or so. The guy was in great shape, but he had his hip replaced. It goes back to the doctor who replaced his hip. He's looking at the x-rays, looking at MRIs, everything looked great. Well, the hip looks great. I mean, my work was awesome. And it was. But what they found out was he was getting metal shavings from the hip joint into his bloodstream, making him sick. And it took somebody who went outside the box to figure that out. But the guy suffered for 6 months before they figured that out. And it's like, so I think we have to really start honing in and focusing on the body as a whole. The biggest shock to me studying muscles of the human body is how little we really do know about them. I've been amazed. I mean, with the peer-reviewed studies that I've looked at and read over the years, we know a ton about strength training. I always say to people, most strength training things that I've looked at, techniques I've looked at, work well. You just have to work them. You have to do your job. Outside of that, I think we're pretty ignorant about the muscles of the human body. I talk to so many doctors and therapists alike, and I'm amazed at how little they do know.
And what do you think? What do you think we need? What sort of things do we need? Do you feel, with your expertise, do we feel we need to explore more to make our muscles better, to make us healthier and stronger?
I think number one, especially with the rise of chronic pain like we have now, that brain muscle connection, we really need to understand that. because when you're
Mhm.
dealing with chronic pain, the reason it goes chronic is, if your leg is broken, you see an x-ray, the leg is broken, boom, we can fix it and you're done.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. Okay. It's when you go to doctor after doctor after doctor, we do this scan, we do that scan, we do this scan. Well, I don't see anything wrong, but my knee is killing me. I can't do anything with my knee. And I think on an emotional side, the person starts to feel hopeless.
Mm.
The person to trying to grit it out with medications. And then all of a sudden the medication causes their stomachs to become irritable or their bowels to become irritable or affects their liver or whatever. And that plays a big role. And I think that that's one of the areas that we really need to work on with muscles is that brain muscle connection, especially in dealing with chronic pain. I think if you don't understand that, dealing with chronic pain is almost impossible.
Well, no, because it's getting that psychology, particularly if you have been through a big operation.
Yeah.
Or broken
Yeah.
something. I mean, I broke my foot several years ago now, and I basically had to learn how to walk again. I didn't think I
Yeah.
would.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's always that in your mind is, I'm going to hurt it. I'm going to hurt it. Even
Yeah.
though there's no pain.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because the brain is remembering that foot got hurt. And that's one of the things in the stretch and release technique, what I work with people, especially with injuries, is that what we do with that is you only hold the stretch for about 5 seconds, but we repeat it 10 times. Now, the reason for doing it 10 times, and we're not pulling hard with that, is that so the brain can see that my foot can move gently in these directions and I had no pain. And what's amazing about that is after you do it a few days and the brain starts to see here in 10 repetitions, I had no pain in that direction, all of a sudden that clears out.
Yeah.
And it's like they go back to walking, even after having some horrendous injuries, go back to walking and moving. But that's understanding that brain muscle connection, because just like you said, you hurt your foot a long time ago, it's healed, but the brain still looks at it and goes, that's my bad foot. You see it a lot. And now I'll teach guys who get like a new knee or whatever, and they'll go, yeah, but this knee's my bad knee. I go, no. That knee's 2 months old. The one on the other side is 60 years old. That's the bad one.
This is it. That's you. I hear this. We all hear this, don't we? And we've heard, maybe we've said it. We heard a family member saying it. Oh, it's my bad hip. It's my bad ankle.
Yes.
It's always going to be that way. It's inevitable. I'm getting old and all these sort of things, all your excuses.
Yeah.
But it's never inevitable. There are things you could do. It's interesting that sort of speech, and it sits in your brain, and I think that can psychologically hold you back from doing what you need to do. Or you make that excuse like it's inevitable, it's gonna happen, or it's expecting it. There's nothing I can do, I'm too old. And I think changing that narrative.
Well, I mean, I get to work with people from anywhere from 7, 8, 9 years old all the way up to 95, 98 years of age. And what I've learned over the years, the difference in people and how well they recover from some of these injuries has a lot to do with mindset. So I've had a guy who's early 70s. He was an avid bike rider. I mean, he rode 50, 60 miles a day for practice. And on the weekends, he'd take trips of 100, 150 miles. And the guy's running 24, 25 miles an hour. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he was doing. Well, he had an accident and broke his hip, and he had to have his hip replaced. So that was in like October of that year. And he got his hip replaced. I said to him, go to your rehab for your physio, because they understand how to take you from the surgery back up to moving around. And then we can work together with her on the end of it to get you back on the bike. Well, so that was like October of 21, I think it was. January of 22, he was back on his bike riding 22 miles an hour at 72 years of age. Okay. Now,
that's incredible.
There's another person along the same lines, had his hip replaced, who was 57 years of age, and he's still complaining today with his hip because he's now 60. I think he's now almost 60 years old. He's close to 60, so it has to be hurting because he's old. And that's the thing, is that people equate aging with pain. That pain comes from not moving, not keeping your flexibility, not keeping your strength to where it should be, and eating poorly. Yeah. And it has way more to do with lifestyle than it does with the fact that you're 60 or 65 years old. And we always tell each other, as you get older, well, you got to slow down now. You're 45. You better slow down. You're now 50 years old. And I remember when I was getting ready to turn 50, and my friends would all come see me, and I was 49 years old, and they're like, oh, you wait till you turn 50. You're going to have this pain and that pain. It's going to be bad. It's going to be really, and I'm like, well, then should I commit suicide at 49 before I turn 50? I mean, this doesn't sound like fun to me, So when I turned 50, I called the next day and I'm like, all right, I woke up this morning. I don't feel any different than I did yesterday, But the thing is that understanding that at 35, 40, we start losing muscle mass at somewhere close to a percent a year. We got to maintain that muscle mass. And especially now
Mm.
that it's more than likely we're going to make it to 80, 85, 90 years old, we've got to keep that muscle mass, because if not, as we get weaker and weaker, we're going to become more and more frail at a faster rate. And that's going to cost us a
Mm.
fortune. When you look at lifespan is around 78, 79 years old. When you look at the healthy lifespan over the last 50 years, we lost a year back to 48. So
Yeah.
from 48 to 78 for the average person is an unhealthy lifespan. We
Yeah.
can change that. We just have to know how to do it.
But is it also that story that, as you just mentioned, we're being told, oh, well, you got to slow down by the time you're
Yeah.
40. It's going to be, and they're already preempting that old age is going to be painful and difficult.
Yes.
You've got to stay at home and not go anywhere. But the great thing I've noticed that a lot of people I'm talking to now who are sort of 50, 60 plus, there's almost, I feel like, and I think it's great that it's happening. There's almost this revival in people who are older going to do extreme sports.
Yes. Yeah.
Which to me is a real great example of actually what is possible if you change. And they've not always been doing it from when they were young. They started as they're getting to midlife.
Yeah.
And it's just
Well,
something.
so a prime example. So when I was 37, 38 and I weighed 315, they checked my carotid arteries and I started to have blockage at 37, 38 years old. They checked it again at 63 after I went through my total transformation. I had zero blockage.
Brilliant.
So the point is that it's lifestyle has way more to do with it than bad luck or anything else. And it's when you read about, people over the age of 60 sitting an average of 6-7 hours a day in front of the TV and sitting in front of their recliners. Oh my gosh, the recliner to me is like the worst thing that an old man can sit in. I'm telling you, you just see people deteriorate from day one. The sitting for long periods of time, you are drying out your joints, you are atrophying your muscles. And as you eat a bad diet, you're just adding more and more weight. So not only are you getting weaker, but you're getting heavier, which makes it even harder to get up and down.
Yeah.
It's just a terrible combination for people as they get older. And I mean, I'm looking at me at 66 and I'm thinking, I probably got at least a good 25 more years left.
Brilliant.
And it's like, I got to I got to prepare for that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so, I mean, my plan is to be another 40 years, but it's like, I got a plan for that. And it's like, I can't do things today that when I'm 80, I look back on and say, man, you were stupid at 66. Why didn't you do so-and-so, And it's just as I've learned about that and changed the way I ate, changed the way I live. And then I watch other people do the same thing in my age group and older. And, there's people who are playing golf and tennis at 88, 89 years old. They're active. I've got one guy who's running his farm at 96 years old by himself, and it's like, for some people that's unheard of, but it's like, it's understanding how much control you do have. And I think that there's two things. I think that the medical system, number one, we don't teach our professionals the importance of nutrition the way we should. And we don't teach them about how to prevent the heart attack. We're very good at once you get the heart attack. And I think that's a huge mistake. And I think the other side of the coin is there's not as much money in it. If you're healthy, why are you going to spend money on the possibility of getting sick?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I think that's the problem, is what are we making more profitable? We need to start making the healthy options more profitable and making it less so to medication is kind of a last resort when there's no other options.
Exactly.
But I want to start getting into your techniques and showing us how this can happen.
Yes.
And I want to hear all about this ball and strap.
Yeah. Yeah. The yoga strap and the tennis ball.
What we can do with ball and strap. I'm excited to hear about this. So let's get into your techniques a little bit and start sharing how people use this.
Yes.
Explain a little bit what it is, first of all, so people understand.
Sure. So with the stretch and release technique, we hit on a little bit earlier where we were talking about how people think of lengthening the muscles. And when you think of lengthening the muscles, what you're doing there is you're trying to pull the muscles like taffy. No matter how tall you are, if you're not 7 feet tall, your muscles are never going to get long enough for somebody who's 7 feet tall. So that's a bit of a mistake. So with my technique, what I focus on is I'm looking for areas of the body that are contributing to the pain. Now, when you're dealing with muscles, wherever the pain is, the cause can be the complete opposite side of the body. Many times for people who have low back pain, when they stand up out of a chair, They have no issue with their back in the beginning. Where they have an issue is the front of their thighs on the front side or the inner thighs on the front side. And if they're dealing with neck and shoulder pain, everybody wants to work the back of the neck, the back, its upper back itself. But many times that pain is coming from the outside chest muscles and the muscles on the front of the neck. So I work at teaching people how to look at their bodies from a different mindset. That if I get up and my neck feels stiff, then I look and say, okay, is my pillow too tall? Or if I've been sitting in front of a computer all day, so I know I need to work this side of my body. Okay, not beat that up over here. The other part of it is that most people, when they come to their muscles, they think they need to manhandle those muscles. We need to really have deep tissue massage. We need to really pound them in big time. That's a massive mistake because, again, we're not understanding that brain muscle connection. And as you increase the pressure and the pain, just like anything else, the brain's going to contract the muscles to stop the pain as much as it can. So that's why you'll see deep tissue massage therapists, their careers are cut short by as much as 10 or 12 years because they blow out their thumbs pressing on these contracted muscles. And people will say, well, I have a deep tissue massage, but I feel good a little bit after when I'm done. You do, because by putting all that pressure, the muscles fatigue out. You could have done the same thing by lifting weights to the point of fatigue. Okay.
Yeah.
Once the muscles fatigue out, they're just like, blah, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. But you're not really going to get that lasting change so that you can get the vertebrae to move properly, the joints to move properly, because you don't have that fear of hurting yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was the initial premise of behind the stretch and release technique is let's get our brain and our muscles working together so that we can get that to release with a lot less work. So what I learned with the yoga strap, when I first started learning this type of stretching, they were using ropes, and the ropes were kind of painful on your feet. And I decided to go to a yoga strap because it was flat, it was much smoother and much softer, but it allowed people to be able to use the strap to rotate their foot in different directions, their arms in different directions, without having to physically use the rotating muscles in their hips or whatever to make that happen. And so what we want to do is zero in and focus on specific parts of the body. So look at a calf muscle, for instance. It's one of my favorite. Most people, when they want to stretch a calf, they'll lean against the wall with one foot stuck behind them, or they'll drop off the edge of a step, or they'll stand on a slant board, and they think they've stretched their calves. What they've basically done is stretch the Achilles tendon. Now, you'll feel it some in the calf, but you're basically stretching the Achilles tendon. You have four major muscles in the calf. So the calf controls the foot vertically for walking, laterally for balance, but rotationally, like when you're playing sports like golf or baseball or something. And so by using the yoga strap, you can sit on the floor with your back against the wall, put the yoga strap around the ball of your foot, and you can rotate the foot in different directions using 10 repetitions in each direction to get those muscles to unlock them. Now, the importance of that is things like plantar fasciitis, which is a pain in the heel that some people will spend months on dealing with it.
Nightmare.
With the yoga strap and that type of calf stretching, I've seen it gone in 24 hours.
Wow.
On average, it's about 5 days.
Wow. Is that because you're using mobility as well as the stretch? So there's movement included in it?
There's movement including in it, but the real cause of the heel pain is not the heel. The real cause of the heel pain is in the belly of the calf muscles up behind the knee. So when you think about somebody who's had plantar fasciitis, as long as the foot is not at a 90-degree angle to the leg, the pain is not there. If you can just let the foot go straight as you're laying on the bed or something like that, there's no pain. It's when you step down on it, you feel the pain. Now, it was named for the arch muscle of the foot, which is the plantar fascia muscle. That muscle will get tight, but it gets tight because those calf muscles are coming down into the foot and connecting in with that arch. And it's not allowing the ankles to bend and not allowing the arch itself to actually flatten to absorb the impact to the ground.
So basically, it's come from kind of dysfunction, hasn't it, through the ankle joint and up to the knee? Because obviously, like the main muscle that everyone thinks of, your gastrocnemius, it covers two joints. So if any of that's affected, and obviously the deeper muscles around that area as well, are causing dysfunction, eventually it's going to have a domino effect to the plantar fascia.
Absolutely. And when you think about the lower leg, has two bones there. And there's muscles in between those two bones. So in rotational movements, those bones have to be able to rotate. And if they can't, you're going to have problems in your foot as well. And the shoe plays a role in the fact that with arch supports and stuff in the shoe, what happens there is it prevents the arch muscle from flattening out when you step down, which causes it to atrophy over time. Now, I realize people use orthotics, they use arch supports when their arches are sore. But you can eliminate that in 2 to 5 days. If you
Mm.
understand how to massage your feet, how to stretch your calves. I've had so many people who've just thrown out their orthotics, it just wasn't even funny. And it's like understanding that connection between the calf and the foot itself. And then when you understand that, that's where you start to get free of that. That stretch would probably take you 5, maybe 7 minutes a day to do. And for people who've had plantar fasciitis or they have painful arches or whatever, usually within a week they'll come back and they go, I can't believe that it's like gone. That's insane.
Mm.
I've been dealing with, and they put people in boots and stuff. And it's like the boot actually exacerbates the problem. And what we want that movement to happen. Same thing is true in the forearm. It works the same way. You have 2 bones in that forearm that allows your wrist to move in all these different directions. Well, when people get things like elbow tendonitis, that's a direct result of the gripping of the hand that's causing the pain up here. Once you soften and loosen this up like you do with the calf, that goes away. And I've seen that gone in an hour.
Wow, that's incredible.
But it's a matter of understanding what is actually causing your pain.
Yeah.
And so part of what I'm teaching people is how to do the stretch and release technique. But part of that secret is understanding how your body works on a very basic level.
Yeah.
And once a person can understand that and they start to change a few things in their lives, they start to see that all of a sudden their life is much better. They're much less pain-free. Many times I've left my office with the word wow on my lips because I'm just blown away with how quick somebody 60, 70, 80 years old just came right back. And I was like blown away by that.
Because it's having these techniques and then understanding what it is you're doing in your everyday life that initially sparked this off.
Yeah.
And so then you adjust your lifestyle or whatever things you're doing repetitively, they're exacerbating. But once you know that, and then you can take this quick technique to help relieve your pain and hopefully never come back.
Exactly right. And the thing is the stretching, it becomes a daily thing for the rest of your life, just like for a dog or a cat or any other animal that's out there. The thing is that we are emotional beings.
Yeah.
And when it comes to our muscles and it comes to the fascia in our body, these are very emotional parts of our body. And unfortunately, when we look at these two parts, we think of the fascia and the muscles from a more mechanical viewpoint. And I think that's a massive mistake when it comes to mobility, flexibility, and so forth. Yeah.
Well, the fascia is really important because it connects everything. It connects all the muscles. Every fiber of the muscle is surrounded with fascia that joins to the bones and etc. So any dysfunction, any lack of movement is going to have a knock-on effect. And obviously it covers your whole body. Sometimes even just relieving that fascia can sometimes make a big difference to people. I've seen happen as well.
And you think about state of mind. Think about like when you feel something in the pit of your stomach when you're nervous. What you're really dealing with there from your emotional state is that fascia is contracting from that emotion. And it's like, once that emotion, that nervousness goes away, all of a sudden the pain you had in your stomach just sort of subsides. Yeah. And it's like, so we have to understand that these two things are very emotion driven and not just a mechanical thing.
Yeah. And I think once people start to realize that, and it always comes down to everything, and this is something that comes up with pretty much every aspect of life, you have to start with your mind first.
You do.
Think about your situation you're in. What is it that's stressing you out?
Yeah.
And you have to go a little bit deep to figure all that out because we tend to think on a very superficial basis. So we need to spend time figuring out if it is something, if you've not had an injury and you've not had an operation, there's something else that's causing it. And it takes a bit of self-reflection, which can be a bit difficult. But I think you have to spend some time working on that. And that's going to make a big difference to how you feel in yourself. And as you say, and then you bring in all the other aspects, the exercise, the stretching techniques, mobility, nutrition, everything.
Well, that was a thing. Like when I lost all that weight at 37, the doctor I dealt with, I said, so what kind of a diet am I going to be on? She goes, not really going to be a diet. I want to teach you how to think about food differently.
It's a whole lifestyle thing.
It's a whole lifestyle thing. And my current wife now, of course, I lost the weight before I met her. Otherwise, I would have never met her. But she was a dietitian in a previous life. When I started talking about looking at food as strictly as fuel, because I was an emotional eater, it changed everything. Because all of a sudden, now I looked at the food that I eat, sort of like the fuel I put into my car. If my car runs on unleaded fuel, I certainly wouldn't put diesel in it or kerosene in it because it wouldn't run right. But it's like understanding what your body needs on a more basic level. And most people have the ability, if they have the internet, to be able to figure that out. And as you understand that, Now, all of a sudden, when you look at food in the store, you look at food in a restaurant, you can look at that and go, that doesn't work for me, but that over there does fine for me. And when you
Yeah.
start making those choices and taking, again, the emotion out of it, then all of a sudden you're starting to get nutrition in your body and the weight will come off pretty easily. Like I said, it took 18 months to lose 105. And then she showed me how to set up my plate so that I can maintain my weight, which I did till 2020. And I decided in 2020 to lose another 30 pounds. And I did that by going back with what I knew. And since 2020, I've maintained that weight. But all my friends are like, well, it doesn't look like you're really working hard. I'm not sacrificing anything because in my mind, when I see the food, just like with the stretching, when I see the food, this is good for me, this is not.
Yeah.
And so there's no emotion tied to that.
I think that's the thing as well. It is like making your mindset, your way of thinking about something is not a sacrifice. You're gaining something. You're not having to give something up. And I think that's another way to kind of look at these things as well. It's not that you're having to give up something. It's once you change your mindset and your behaviors and habits around something, or understand that, you get to the cause of the problem. And then it becomes much easier to make those changes and make the better choices.
That is true. That is true. And that I always say to my new clients when they come in, give me at least 3 sessions because we need to change your mindset first. I said, the work itself is easy, but we need to change the mindset first, and then you can run from there.
Yeah.
But then the people who do it they have great success with it. And I get some people that they just don't want to do it. They're like, I'd rather just have a knee replacement or whatever. And I'm like, that's totally your choice. Wouldn't be mine, but that's your choice. Right.
There'll always be people who want that sort of somebody else can do it for me option. I don't have to make any effort myself, but the long-term consequences.
Yeah, I've had guys who will say, can I just pay you 3 or 4 times a week for you to do it? And I go, you don't understand. It doesn't matter whether I'm doing it or you're doing it. Your brain has to be a part of that or it doesn't work. Yeah. And that throws them off because they thought they could just throw money at it and I would just stretch them out and they could lay there and go to sleep. Well, and the same thing is true of massage. Because when I give people just regular massages, I always say to them, if you go to sleep on the table in the massage, all you did was rent a bed for an hour's worth of sleep. The therapist could have left and got a cup of tea and come back an hour later and woke you up. I said, it's a team thing because as the therapist is working on you, again, the mind plays a role. And if the therapist is cognizant of what they're doing, they'll give you the time and the coaching to breathe so that the massage has a more lasting effect on it.
Yeah.
And then you can teach people how to do self-massage things that in between the sessions, instead of going back to zero every time they come in, they literally build on where they left off the last time.
Yeah.
That's the whole key to it. It's a team thing when it comes to muscles.
Absolutely. But if people want to find out more about your technique and they want to see how it's done, is there any way you can direct them so they can sort of see some videos? Obviously you've got your YouTube channel, Muscle Repair Shop.
Right.
But where can people actually learn about this a bit?
So there's several ways you can do that. Number one, my book is on Amazon, Stretch and Release. It's an award-winning book from last year that actually breaks down exactly what we're talking about today, so you can fully understand what we're doing. And it also breaks down why a lot of traditional treatments either have failed or just didn't work as well as you had hoped. And then the back part of the book, it gets into specific areas of your body and it has a QR codes in the book that you can use with your phone to get to the videos to support what I'm showing you how to do in the book. Secondly, go to my YouTube channel, The Muscle Repair Shop. In that channel, there's more than 200 videos there. I'm going to be starting this spring. I think it's going to be probably April or May, a membership site there. So what we can do there is have weekly Q&As to answer questions for people, do live demonstrations, and there'll be some deep dive tutorial videos there that you can use and have as a member that you now can learn even online. You don't have to be just here to be able to do that. And then lastly, you can go to my website, musclerepairshop.com. There you can subscribe to a weekly newsletter. That newsletter comes out usually every Tuesday. And in that newsletter, not only do I get into specific things, but also give you 2 to 3 videos that'll support what I'm talking about. If you're dealing with that, you can help get through that as well. And you're always free to call me on the phone, email me, whatever. If you're not living in Sarasota, you can jump online. I've talked to people from all over the world, help people from all over the world just online. And we can talk about things from there too. So plenty of ways to get in touch.
They can buy the equipment, the strap and the ball from your website?
Yeah, they can get the ball and the strap on the website. And Everything you need is right there. And that's really all you need. Your hands, the ball, and the strap.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about it, you can take it with you no matter where you go. It travels
Yeah.
easily. I've been all over Europe and back, and it's like nobody's taking it away from me, so I've been good. So yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
the great thing, particularly for those who travel a lot, even athletes who
yes,
travel a lot, having
yes,
something they can just pick up, after a long journey and just
yeah,
use to get themselves. Being stuck on a flight maybe for
yeah.
hours could be a real nightmare.
Well, yeah, I mean, even things like with the neck stretches that I have, many times, like when I go home at night at each of the stoplights when they're red and I'm waiting for them to turn green, I'll work on a neck stretch at each stoplight on my way home. So by the time I get home, my neck is free to back up if it happens to be tight. So those are the kind of things that I want to teach people how to do throughout their day so they don't have to take up so much of their day.
Yeah, and that's great because it is something that needs to be simple for most
Yeah,
people because people are just short of time. And I think that's
yeah.
what makes them give up and
Hmm.
seek someone else to do it for them in that sense. If it's simple, it's easy to use, and they can do it anytime.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'll always think about instead of having things done to you, learn and do them to yourself, and your body will
Right.
thank you for that.
Look, Butch, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We're
Thank you.
just kind of running out of time. We could talk for hours. But obviously, if people want to find out more, you've directed them to where they can go on your
Yes.
website and your YouTube channel, which is fantastic. So the musclerepairshop.com.
Mhm. That's true.
So do follow him and go and buy your ball and strap and
Yeah.
start stretching and releasing the muscles and get that mobility going, as we said, because that's really important as well as obviously the strength and recovery and your nutrition and everything else. But look, Butch, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining me
Thank you
today.
for
I'm
having
sure
me.
everyone is going to appreciate and learn
I hope
something
so.
really different
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
never thought of. They've been stuck with plantar fasciitis and tendonitis this and tendonitis that. Now you've got a solution and you can get it
Yes.
resolved very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, as I say, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
thank you everyone who is listening in today and watching the show. And we'll see you next time here on Unleash Your Inner Athlete. Thank you.